Friday the 13th Part 2 came out in 1981 and grossed $21.7 million at the box office. That's way down from the $59 million the previous movie grossed, but still a hefty profit for a movie that only cost $1.25 million. With Paramount now looking at the Friday the 13th franchise as a no-risk investment, they greenlit Part 3. But how do we make this movie special? How do we make it stand out? Well, there was a little Spanish movie called Comin' At Ya that gave us the answer. At this point, 3D movies was just a short fad from the past. But this cheap movie came out and grabbed $12 million at the box office, and all the studios paid attention. And before you knew it, dozens of 3D movies were announced by every studio. I mean, come on, those studios need that money too. Paramount decided Friday the 13th would be their first picture they put in 3D. So before we get any further, let us know in the comments, are you a fan of Friday the 13th Part 3, or is it one of the weaker ones in the series to you? Let us know. With the addition of 3D to the Friday the 13th franchise, that means production costs had to go up, and this budget went up to $2.25 million. Steve Miner, the director of Part 2, would return to the director's chair for Part 3. Frank Mancuso Jr. would also return to produce the film. It helps when your father is an executive for Paramount Pictures, of course. Harry Manfredini would return to do the score, mostly leftover music from Part 1 and Part 2. But Manfredini teamed up with Michael Zager and co-wrote a very disco-y kind of song for the soundtrack that sticks out and in many ways doesn't fit the movie or the vibe of this franchise, but is great. Marty Sadoff was brought in to oversee 3D of the movie, as he knew just as much as anybody else in Hollywood about 3D, not much at the time. They basically had to figure out which type of camera they wanted to shoot in 3D and even make some new technology for this movie. Legendary makeup effects master Stan Winston, who almost did Part 2 but had to bow out for other projects, signed on to do the makeup for Jason. More on this subject later. Martin Rosser and Carol Watson wrote the screenplay. And I'm sorry if I mispronounce this, but Petro Popescu came aboard to do rewrites, mostly adding scenes for 3D effects. Not returning for Part 3 is any of the cast from Part 2, most notably Amy Steele, who played Ginny, our surviving heroine who took out Jason with a machete. Originally, they wanted Amy Steele to return and have the character be in a sanatorium where murders are happening. Is it Jason? We don't know. But once she dropped out, producers basically said, okay, let's just do the same thing. Amy Steele doesn't remember why she said no, and I quote, "Then my agent got involved, and I don't know whether it was money issue or script issue, but I didn't do it." Something the actress would later say she regrets. With Amy Steele out, they went out to find a new cast and put the best effort forward. Seriously, the best effort. Shelley actor Larry Zerner was a struggling actor taking tickets to a movie called The Road Warrior. You guys know what movie I'm talking about. Then film producers walked up and asked if he was an actor and wanted to be in a movie. That was that. Nick Savage, who played Ali, the leader of the bikers, had just bought a motorcycle and drove to the audition. Steve Miner looked down at him and bam, he got the job. Paul Kiaka came into the audition looking like a working carpenter to play the role of Rick, who was basically a mountain type man anyways. David Katniss was hired to play Chuck. He was told by the casting agent he's basically a Tommy Chong ripoff, and he was told he just needed to grow his hair and beard long. Tracy Savage, a former child star, wanted to leave acting altogether and go to college, but thought it would be a fun way to say goodbye to acting and make money for college at the same time. She came aboard to play Debbie. Dana Kimmel was signed on to play Chris, our new protagonist. I'm sorry to say this, but I feel like this character is a little downgrade from Alice and Ginny of the previous two movies. Not the actress's fault, but it's the script's fault. And most important of all, Richard Brooker, the former circus performer, was brought on board to bring Jason to life. And to me, damn, did he bring Jason to life. With the script rewritten, casting complete, production began in Saugus, California, and would shoot for 3 months under the codename Crystal Japan. The set was built for the movie. The cabin, the barn, even the lake was man-made. And that barn, we'll definitely talk about that barn. Filming seemed to be a nightmare, as setting up for the 3D shots took hours and usually involved dozens and dozens of takes just to get the shot right. while the rest of the scenes got less importance, usually 1 or just 2 takes. Tracy Savage recalls, "The key priority was making sure the 3D effects worked. It didn't matter how the lines were delivered." This movie is known as being one of the more stressful shoots of the entire franchise. Richard Brooker at one point tried to have a little fun and lighten up the set as he came out of the door while they were shooting, dressed as Jason, smoking his pipe that he was known to do. He recalls people were not amused, as that was a late night shoot. Speaking of Jason, we are getting a major upgrade here, and Jason is getting his iconic hockey mask in this movie. The script just said mask, and they were looking at other options while Martin Sadoff had his hockey gear in his bag. He took out his Red Wings goalie mask. Steve Miner loved it. After a few modifications and a new paint job, a legend was truly born. With choosing to be the first movie to wide release in 3D, Paramount had to spend a fortune modifying the projectors in all theaters, just to be able to show their movie. Not only did they do that, but they also had to pay to have a 24-hour hotline for theaters to call to troubleshoot problems. So now, let's do a rundown of this movie. First, just like part 2, we got a recap of the ending of the previous movie. But then this time, we get an awesome new title screen and credit roll in 3D. And to accompany this, we get that new jam that I was talking about by Harry Manfredini and his co-writer. Seriously, this song is so awesome. We next move to a little convenience store. And this is where we meet the true villain of this movie, Harold, and his wife Edna. Seriously, Harold disgusts me more than any character I think I've ever seen in any movie. Look at his dirty shirt and how dirty this guy is. Let's watch him eat some fish food. Then he starts opening packages and eating products off his shelves and then puts them back for customers. Seriously, he just drank out of that orange juice and put it back. Gross. Then after all that, he runs to the bathroom and it's really gross seeing where he goes to the bathroom, stands up without wiping, and doesn't wash his hands. Oh my gosh. Gross. I can't take it. He even has his pet rabbit on the fresh produce. That's disgusting. So let's just say minutes later, when he's dispatched with the big cleaver and then Edna's taken out, I don't feel that bad. Maybe Jason's the hero of this movie. And yes guys, that was just a joke. We also had a few 3D shots thrown in here as well. One with the pole Harold's holding, a rat, the snake jumping out. This stuff looks amazing, right? Yeah, amazing. After another pointless 3D shot of a baseball bat, we start to meet our new characters. Chris, Andy, and Debbie get out of a van to pick up their friend Vera. And who's that behind them? Well, that's low self-esteem Shelley, acting out for attention, of course. There is also a stoner couple, Chuck and Chili, in the van. And I'm going to say right now, these two are just here. First, Chuck looks way older, and they don't look like they fit into this group at all. They have real no purpose here as they don't really interact with many people and have no point to the story. They're just here to be 2 more victims in this movie. They passed the crime scene of the previous night at the store, and this is only 1 or 2 days after the events of part 2. Why would you even be at Crystal Lake? Don't you watch the news? The murderer is on the loose. Anyway, we meet horny Rick waiting in his cabin. I mean seriously, from the moment they get in there, he is all over Chris, and that is the only thing on his mind and the only thing he can talk about. I forgot to mention the old man they pass on the way there, who shows him his eyeball in 3D and warns him of the evil that's going to happen. This is just clearly a copy of the character Crazy Ralph from the first 2, but without the charisma that Crazy Ralph brought us. Miss you, Ralph. Shelley fakes his death. Rick and Chris put hay in the barn for some reason. Then Shelley and Vera go to the store where we meet up with 3 bikers. They take Shelley's wallet. Man, did you see that? It's like that wallet's coming right at me in 3D. Okay, enough of that. This turns into Shelley driving into the bikes, getting his windshield busted, and then running over the motorcycles. He's a hero for 5 minutes. We get this 3D yo-yo shot.
That was close.
No, that wasn't close, Debbie. It hit your face. The bikers get to the cabin for revenge. Loco even barks for some reason. Fox goes into the barn and decides to start playing with everything. I mean, everything. Loco goes in and finds Fox dead with a pitchfork stuck in her neck, before he then turns around and also gets a pitchfork in his stomach. A couple of pretty decent 3D shots here. Ali then enters, has a fight with Jason where he gets defeated. But shh, he's not dead yet, guys. We get a scene with Rick and Chris talking about an attack she had in the woods 2 years prior, where this really ugly man attacked her, and then she woke up in her own bed. I would like to note here, originally they had Jason assault her in a very different way, and you know what I mean. But then they thought, that type of thing is not very fun for anybody involved. And man, am I glad that they removed it. That just doesn't fit Friday the 13th or Jason at all. I don't know what they're thinking. We get a juggling contest just so we can add another 3D shot. Sex in a hammock. Then Shelly gets denied by Vera. Shelly then decides to scare Vera while she sits at the dock. He pulls her foot and then comes out of the water wearing the hockey mask and holding a harpoon. Now let's get into one of the most important scenes of this movie in my opinion. There he is, Jason wearing the hockey mask for the first time ever. He lifts up the harpoon and shoots Vera in the eye. And to me, this is still one of the most iconic deaths in the whole Friday the 13th franchise. It's definitely gotta be top, 5 or 6 I would say. Can we also pause here for a second and take a look at Jason? I mean, 2 days ago, he looked like this. Hillbilly, hair, totally different. Now, he's much taller, he's shaved, he has different clothes. And what happened to that shoulder wound that Jenny gave him in the last movie? Did he just automatically heal? No, it's basically the producers and director of this movie just didn't care. Jason kills Andy while he's doing a handstand. Debbie finishes her shower and then sits down to read Fangoria magazine. Shout out Fangoria magazine. Man, that brings back memories. Then if you follow the rules of the first 2 movies, well, she's laying down in a bed or a hammock, so she gets a machete to the chest. Chuck is killed next with the fuse box. But we do get this really cool scene where he turns on the light and it lights up Jason behind him. Love that scene. Chili discovers the bodies and starts screaming after she just said this.
Give me something to scream about.
And then she just starts wandering around the cabin, whining and fussing, in no rush at all, and maybe one of the worst acted scenes in this whole franchise. Then she gets dispatched by a red-hot fire poker in 3D. Oh, I forgot. Shelly's dead too. He was killed off screen, but then comes in through the door with his throat slit. Chili thought he was just playing a prank. I love this shot of Jason carrying Chili. He looks like the Frankenstein monster. It's awesome. Rick and Chris get back to the cabin. Poor Rick gets his head squeezed and his eyeball pops out in another legendary scene from this franchise. In 3D. Now we get to the Chris and Jason fight. This is a great final act fight. With iconic shots of Jason in the window, fight in the cabin, we even hear Jason grunt. Weird, right? Chris falls out the window, then gets chased into her van, where Jason busts his head through the window. And yes, we see Jason running in this scene. Remember that when we get to the 2009 remake and I defend it. We have a great fight in the barn, which leads to Jason being thrown out of the barn with the rope around his neck and hung. Jason's not dead though, can't kill him that easy, and for some reason he reveals his face. Hey, that's the man who attacked me in the woods 2 years ago. What are the odds? And what a beautiful face it is. Then eventually Jason gets an axe to the head. He's dead, right? Well, I don't know about that, but Chris falls asleep in a boat, wakes up and sees Jason in the cabin window without his mask, then bursts through the door towards her. I love this scene. It's so creepy. The whole thing takes place in daylight, which almost makes it creepier than the darkness. And she's stuck in a boat and can't go anywhere. She sees the danger coming towards her, faster and faster, and has nowhere to go. It's actually brilliant. And then Jason's gone. The door isn't broken. Is this a dream? Again? Then bam! Zombie Mrs. Voorhees pops out of the water and pulls her down. Yes, we're doing that again. Wait, it's a dream again. Yes. 3rd movie in a row. Cops say she's the only survivor, and she freaks out as she gets put in a cop car. And that's the end of the movie. So how is this movie? Well, it's not great. It's the same story rehashed, the acting is not great, shot just okay, and I love every second of this movie. Sure, I know it's not a piece of art, but I have fun every time I watch this movie. Now this wasn't originally the ending of the film. Originally, Chris was going to see Rick in the cabin, go towards the door was going to bust open with Jason right there, and he was going to decapitate Chris. But producers thought it was a little too definitive of an ending, and they also weren't in love with the makeup that Stan Winston did for Jason. Now wait, that doesn't even look like Jason. Correct. So with them not liking the original ending, they decided to go back, rewrite it, and reshoot it. Only this time, Stan Winston was no longer available as he was working on other projects. So his makeup was scrapped and a new makeup team took over. Man, this Jason looks mean. He looks aggressive. I would have loved to see this. At least we have a few photos of what was taken behind the scenes. This would have been great. I also just wonder how the franchise would have changed if this is the Jason that would have been put in the movie. Friday the 13th Part 3 was released August 13th, 1982 in 1,079 theaters, and it was selling out all over the country. This was the first wide release of a 3D movie ever, and by the end of the weekend, theaters were even running out of 3D glasses. On opening weekend, it grossed $9.4 million, and a total worldwide box office of $36.5 million at the end of its run. Pietro Papascul, the writer that was brought in to tweak the script and add the 3D scenes, says, "I saw the screen with my agent. After it was over, he leaned over and said, 'You don't want your name on the credits of something like this.' So he had his name taken off the project." Another interesting fact is Jason's name is never actually mentioned at any point in this movie. This would be Steve Miner's last Friday the 13th film he would direct, before moving on to other projects. He said, "The script wasn't very good, and the acting isn't up to par, but I think the 3D effects worked out well. My hope is just that I brought something different to them as a director, but at the time, I stayed within the formula and made a commercial movie." I feel this movie used to be thought of with much higher respect. For the past few years, it seems that this movie keeps going down and down on everybody's list. I watch it for what it is, a fun, good time with what might be my favorite Jason. Richard Brooker, to me, defined what Jason was, and I feel that most actors that came after him used the foundation he gave us for their roles. His stature and movements are very creepy. He was thin but muscular at the same time, and with the makeup, it was almost like a hunchback look. This is a one-of-a-kind Jason to me, and there are so many iconic shots of him in this movie. How do you not love this Jason? Rest in peace, Richard Brooker. You were an icon. The biggest complaint I usually hear about this movie is the 3D shots ruin it nowadays. To me, they don't really bug me that much. They are what they are. To me, the thing that kinda bugs me a little bit is that darn barn. Yes, they spend so much time in that barn and have to show almost every character in the whole movie entering this barn or in the barn. Here, let me show you. Here's Chris going into the barn. Here's Rick in the barn. Fox, Loco, Ollie, Shelly, Chuck and Chili, Jason? Yeah, too much, guys. Why do we have to have every character go in the barn? I don't get it. As for Paramount, no good deed goes unpunished. All those projectors they had to pay to get modified, well, they got sued and lost for antitrust laws. And then they had to recall all the lenses from the theaters. As for 3D as a whole in Hollywood, we got a few more titles like Jaws 3D. Yeah, that scene sucks. They just weren't boxing that much money, and before you knew it, 3D was dead once again. Not until Avatar did it come back. At this point, I would just like to point out, I get a lot of information from reading articles, watching movies, watching them with commentary, and also this book, Crystal Lake Memories. I highly recommend anyone who's a fan of Friday the 13th or horror movies in general, pick this book up. It covers every movie in the franchise with the exception of the 2009 reboot. Tons of interviews from cast members from every movie, behind the scenes pictures. This is a must for any true fan. It's amazing, guys. Well, that'll do it for this one. Let us know in the comments, do you like Friday the 13th Part 3? Or is it just not so high on that list for you? Thanks for watching.